And we've got chapters all across the world, including across the USA, in Europe, Mexico, Canada, and most recently China. And in addition to our meetups, we also host the annual Primer Conference. Has anybody gone? Anybody been to Primer? Well, this is perfect because we have one coming up and it's in a couple months and you can go then. It's in New York and you can buy tickets at primerconference.com and it's going to be just fabulous. We're also doing our last call for speakers next week, so if you want the opportunity to speak or share a project or be a presenter there, come and talk to me and I'll connect you with the right people at the end of this shindig. We're on social media, as we expect you are as well, and if you'd like to engage with us there, we are here. So we're always looking for folks to volunteer. Our organization is fully volunteer run. So if you want to come in and you've been working on a project, by night in your bedroom or at the office or, wherever, we would love for you to share it with our group. There's an email address up here. If you email your info to that address, we can get you lined up to speak at one of our events. We do them monthly here in the city and then some coming up in the South Bay too. We are also looking for volunteers to help run the events on a day-to-day basis and new leaders for the San Francisco chapter, somebody to help co-lead this particular chapter. So if you have any interest in being, I need to talk louder or closer? Oh, sorry everybody. Where did I lose you? Just kidding, I won't backtrack. So if you're interested in helping co-run the San Francisco chapter, come talk to me. I'll tell you a little bit about the opportunity, and we're actively looking for somebody to start ASAP. So tonight, we are at the beautiful new Innovation Hub for Accenture Labs. A big thanks to Bill and the Accenture Labs team for having us. This is just gorgeous. Thank you for the food and the beautiful drinks and the beautiful space. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. So I'm going to pass this over to Bill, and Bill's going to tell us a little bit about the organization.
Any moment. I'm Bill Lesieur. I work in Accenture Labs, and officially welcome you to the San Francisco Innovation Hub. This floor opened last month, so all 5 of our floors are officially open right now. We've been here for about 6 months upstairs, Accenture Labs. So we're quite excited. This floor has no offices or desks. This is just for clients, partners, and community meetings like this and collaboration. So it's quite exciting. We have this giant space right here to do that. And just another side note, within Accenture Labs, we've created this program called Shaping the Future, which is totally grounded in foresight thinking or strategic foresight. And that's the main reason we're involved in this meetup community, because everybody, well not everybody, most people here are also grounded in foresight thinking. So we're quite excited about that. And several of us, including Eddie, we went to the Primer 18 conference in Berkeley this year. So from there, we're going to hand it over to Eddie, who's our Chief Research Scientist of Accenture Labs, and he's the one that let me do this.
Good evening. In fact, you enjoy the pizza and the beer. I'm Liongosari, and it's actually our honor to actually be able to host you in our new facility. Hope actually everything works. There's still a lot of testing here on the floor, and as you can see that hopefully we have a video cue for you and hopefully it works. But I just want to spend a few minutes actually to just explain who we are, why we are in this space. So for those of you who are not familiar with Accenture, Accenture is a professional service organization. We help a lot of clients define their business strategy, transform their businesses through our industry knowledge, to help them actually with the customer experiences, putting intelligence and automation into their business processes, and run part of their businesses as well on their behalf, right? We are 400,000 organization across 120 countries, 40 industry. So we actually sort of very deep into the industry and actually to be able to get things working very quickly. Now, the reason why we actually have this hub is that we actually sort of think through and step back. 75% of Fortune 500 are our clients. So you walk the street there, look at some of the big brands, there's a very high likelihood they are our clients. And many of them are striving to actually look at the technology innovation, especially changes, so that they can actually continue to stay competitive, to be able to actually drive the market. So they actually come to us, actually, this is actually the facility built specifically for that, to be able to immerse themselves into the technology, what's new, what's actually coming, and the theme actually we have is speculating their future as well, because nobody knows exactly what the future will be, but help them actually sort of shape what actually their destiny could be, and actually help the overall ecosystem. So as an R&D organization, Accenture Labs is actually in a position to actually help the ecosystem partners. So we are very, very much dependent on the partnerships that we have forming in various organizations, big and small, in the Bay Area and elsewhere, to actually be able to define and actually bring the technology to our clients. Think of us actually as shapers and accelerators of the technology flow to our clients. The big clients to be able to scale, not just to be able to test the pilot technology, but to be able to make the innovation real. So that's actually what actually this facility is all about, and our capability. And I'm going to just quickly show you the video, a quick video of what actually we do in the lab. Because there's a lot of things we actually cover, from robotics all the way to end-to-end user experience in, say, autonomous car. So that's actually just a quick overview of what's there. The topic that we have today around the future of emotion is something that is actually near and dear to our heart, mostly because this is actually something that we have been actually working on as well in the lab. Okay, this is actually back in say a good 20 years ago. Still, quite rudimentary of technology, understanding and to be able to detect emotion, especially in call centers. We have a lot of clients actually, large clients actually understanding that you have a lot of call centers to be able to detect when somebody actually get upset. Before that actually happen, we want actually to be able to escalate the process, how to make it happen, and how to do that in real time. This actually is one of the visions that we have back 20 years ago. So it's actually great to be able to revisit this particular topic and see how far we actually have been and how much change we have done. Okay, with that, I'll close for now, and very much looking forward to actually what Stacey had to say. Enjoy your evening.
I'd like to start out with a little bit of gratitude before I introduce myself. Bill and the Accenture crew, Julieta and Michelle, thank you all so much for providing such an amazing space. What an amazing vantage point to look at the future. The 33rd floor, that's going to be hard to beat. And Jess, wherever you are, thank you so much for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm very excited to share some really interesting subject matter with you tonight. So, a little bit about me. I am interested in the convergence and the interplay of emotions and technology. I'm a founder and creative strategist at Buoyant, where I built brands for Microsoft, children's books, for Starbucks, and I've helped launch category-defining startups like Liongosari. Over the last 18 months, I've been building upon this brand strategy in design strategy. And one of the things that I have found along the way is strategic foresight. It's one of the most interesting tools to add and be able to identify the near-term challenges and the long-term opportunities for my clients. And where did I find this enthusiasm for strategic foresight? It was at CCA's DMBA, MBA in Design Strategy, with Matthew Manos, who this year is the Cone of Possibilities. This is one of the foundational frameworks that we learned. Not enough time to talk about that, but if you think about CCA, oh yeah, there we go. CCA is on the other side. It's not technically known as the Nave of Innovation, but there's amazing creativity that comes out of this space. So how did I arrive at the study of the future of emotions? I created an experimental product called Lusty Letter. It's a positively naughty line of greeting cards. If you look at the conventional message, it says thinking of you, and then I'll let you read the naughty surprise in between the letters. And so when I would go and take these cards to trade shows and retailers, people would say, oh my gosh, these cards just liberate me. They say what I'm feeling or what I'm too afraid to say. And so with that, I was able to get the cards to 40 locations across America, but at the same time, the greeting card industry is contracting. So when I was in Matt's class, learning about strategic foresight, it was a great opportunity to see where could Lusty Letter go next? What's the next wave of sentiment sending? And you'll see some of that exploration here tonight. So, why are all of you here? Many of us here are work in the creation of developing experiences between emotional humans and non-emotional technology. So, we are not alone. Companies like Apple and the Department of Defense and Headspace are all putting significant effort into enhancing and making our emotions through technology using effective computing and emotion AI. One way to identify opportunities and solutions for better experiences, whether it's a new product or a new service or a new system, is to look at various different features, strategic foresight. So tonight, I'll demonstrate a highly useful tool to envision various preferable futures and how that process helps to identify threats and opportunities and wherever technology and humans meet. So what are we going to do for the next hour or so? We'll ground ourselves with defining emotions, and then we'll move into the nuts and bolts of the Three Horizons framework. We'll look at trends and emerging issues that actually fuel those horizons, and then we'll dive into those speculative futures, those scenarios. And interspersed between that, we'll have some emotional prototyping, and then we'll wrap things up with Q&A. So, what are emotions? These are some of the things that we feel day in and day out, but oftentimes we're kind of ill-prepared to really define what they are. And so, they're essential for one thing. Whether we're making a decision, you have to have an emotion before you can make a rational decision, or we're perceiving something. The emotions are just part and parcel of all these things. So, what are the things that actually make up emotions? There's three key aspects. There's the subjective, that initial feeling, not a physical feeling, because that's what comes next. The physiological aspect of the feeling. Oh my God, I just lost all the information on my hard drive. It's like my stomach just dropped. That's what this is. Then there's the expressive. How do we actually behave or respond to any given emotion? So, why do we care about emotions? They're a foundational level emotions help us to manage threats and opportunities. They're, as I mentioned earlier, a key component of the decision-making process. They help others to understand us. They help us understand ourselves. And yet, actually, there are many forces within various different cultures that actually kind of suppress the acknowledgement of emotions. And if you suppress emotions too much, it can really lead to bad behavior, destructive behavior. And I'm sure there are many of you who have helped a friend come out of the siren song of bacon rolls. You know, helping people out of things like that, that's noble work. So, how can we use emotions? The utility of emotions is that, you know, if we can recognize, control, and understand our emotions and reactions, we can arrive at awareness. If we can then manage, control, and adapt to our emotions and reactions, then we can arrive at self-management. And lastly, if we can use our emotions to then take the steps needed to achieve our goals, then we can arrive at motivation. So topics such as these have been widely explored by life sciences, but traditionally technologists have tended to dismiss them. And so that dismissal of emotions is somewhat wrapped up in some gender attachments or stereotypes that would warrant a whole talk in and of itself. We're not going to get into that tonight, but the good thing is that one of the reasons why technologists have kind of not embraced them so much is that they actually, emotions are hard to quantify, and emotions are difficult to basically, they're not hard and fast. And so what's great about that is that technologists are actually coming around to emotions because of wearables and chatbots. Sensors are making emotions much easier to quantify, and conversational UI requires serious algorithms that technologists love to love. So now you've got a sense for how influential emotions are in everything that we do. And if you've got humans, you've got emotions. To get a better sense and a better handle on such an all-encompassing and high-impact topic, let's bring things down to size with structure provided by the Three Horizons framework. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. All right, so X is time, Y is strategic fit, and ultimately this framework is a method of modeling current and future attitudes. The frameworks aim to identify characteristics of undefined technologies and systems or approaches. And what you see here are three different, you see a generic version of three different states, or a company or a product, and Horizon 1 is the current state. So here you have what's happening right now. And then in this particular instance, you've got this Horizon 1 descending. So it's losing strategic fit over time. With Horizon 2, you have a transitional state. And Horizon 2 is a little bit more raucous. There's a lot more going on there because it's kind of in the middle of this established state and this emerging state. But it's very rich. It has the potential to be very rich with innovation. With Horizon 3, you've got the emerging issue or the preferable future. And here, this sometimes with Horizon 3 can be addressing the strategic fit in such a dominant way that it obliterates Horizon 1. Not all the time, but there are some instances. So what's great about the Three Horizons framework is that it grounds elements of the present into the future. And by doing so, you maintain contact with underlying systems and structures, and therefore envision something that can actually happen. You're not just pulling things out of the sky. And the framework is also really effective at maintaining reference points for different speeds of change. So that what the curves do basically is they indicate the rate of adoption or rejection. So in this generic case, the Horizon 1, it's getting rejected or abandoned over time, whereas Horizon 3, the dotted magenta line, is gaining adoption and, again, addressing customer needs over time, or the constituents. So why might you use this framework? Have you ever needed to identify the ramifications of a new strategy or policy? If you've ever needed to connect strategic foresight with processes to change, then you've come to the right framework, because the companies like the Institute for the Future, companies like Accenture, and social impact consultancies like Very Nice, product development companies like Philosophy, and government R&D groups like DARPA all use this framework. So let's look at a real-world media technology scenario as an example, so that we can really ground ourselves in what this framework, how this framework works. Having said that, we're actually going to look, this scenario we're going to look at retrospectively. We're going to look back in time, whereas all the other scenarios that you'll see tonight are looking forward into the future. So, fast forward. A point of distinction and clarification on definitions. So there are more than one Three Horizon frameworks out there. McKinsey has their own that is focused on growth, whereas the one that I'll be teaching you tonight is based on the work of Bill Sharp and Andrew Curry and Tony Hodgson. And that comes out of this book here that Bill Sharp wrote, Patterning New Horizons. So, the one thing that's different, McKinsey focuses on growth, whereas Bill Sharp and company focuses on a narrative of growth as well as decline. So it's a little bit more well-rounded, you could say, and it's more based in narrative and this speculative future. All right, so the real-world example that I'm going to present to you is Blockbuster and Netflix. And I want everybody to flash back to 1999. So Blockbuster in Horizon 1 has just IPO'd. They've raised a nice amount of capital, and they have a rental model that takes you to lovely retail spaces like this with sprayed ceilings. Can you feel that experience? It's wonderful. So not only do you have to go to a retail space, anybody in the room that has never actually been to a Blockbuster? Probably a few. So their business model was that you had to rent a VHS or a DVD for 3 days, and if you didn't return it, you then were fined. You had a late fee. So we're going to now fast forward to Horizon 3. We're going to bypass Horizon 2. And in Horizon 3, we have Netflix streaming. And there, right now, this is 2018, just last year. And they're selling at almost $300 a share. They have 87 million subscribers. They are seriously serving their customer needs, and you can watch wherever on any platform. And if you want, you can abandon your friends and family and work and binge watch series after series. So they're really tending to their customer needs. So, before I do that, any guesses on what Horizon 2 is, now that I revealed the slide? It's Netflix, but DVDs. So now we've moved to Horizon 2, and it's 2002, And Netflix has IPO'd, and they didn't do such a great job of raising capital as Blockbuster did, but what they're really doing a good job of is taking subscribers away and taking customers away from Blockbuster because they have a better business model. They didn't create any new technology. They are leveraging the existing product of DVDs. So they created greater strategic fit. They tended to their customer needs better than Blockbuster. So what's nice about doing a retrospective Three Horizons model is that it's really easy to see, kind of where things were happening and how things worked. When you move into developing Three Horizons scenarios for the future, you tend to, the curves, you're ballparking the curves a little bit more, whereas here the curves can get a little bit more exact. So as a point of reference, Blockbuster went bankrupt in 2010. All right, so now we've got a good intro into the Three Horizons. So let's see what fuels those horizons. Because these are the things that
Define strategic fit.
strategic fit, how well a company or a product or a system is serving their customers or their constituency for whatever they need to serve. Yeah. Okay, so how do you actually arrive at a horizon? You fuel that with trends and emerging issues. And we're going to define and make a distinction between what's a trend and what's an emerging issue, because it can get a little fuzzy. Trends are what's happening right now. Emerging issues are actually trends, but there are elements of that trend that have not been adopted by the mainstream yet. So in this example, I've used the category of computing. And in computing right now, what's hot is multi-cloud. We're done with cloud servers. We're still using cloud servers, but now we're connecting to cloud servers because it serves the customer needs better than just cloud serving. So the emerging issue within computing is quantum computing. And while it would be an amazing technology to fuel all the AI and various other heavy-duty computing lifting, the technology is just super fragile. It needs cryogenic hardware in order to make sure that everything stays extremely cool. So this and many other things are the things that are preventing it from being adopted by the mainstream. So now we're going to do a really high-level kind of fly through the trends and emerging issues that are influencing the three scenarios that we'll see tonight. And one thing to think about these trends and emerging issues, think of it as a cloth. As a quilt. Some of these will be whole cloth, some of these will be patches, and some of them will be threads. There's no kind of specific application of one or the other. All right, wearables. So the Feel wristband and the Spire Stone, while they might not get as much press as the iWatch, they're doing some really interesting things in mapping emotions and helping people overall to kind of achieve their well-being goals. With emotional management apps, Headspace is doing a great job of reducing stress and actually just getting people to think about how they're feeling on a regular basis. With biometrics, every time we touch our Apple phone, our iPhone, we're sending a biological read to Apple. With emojis, while they've been around for a while, what's interesting about them is that people keep finding new and interesting things to do with emojis. There's a bank out of the UK that uses them as pins, and what they found is that people can remember them better, and from a security standpoint, they're much harder to hack. With the Internet of Things, I'm sure many of you have a Nest thermostat or Alexa at home, and this distributed network can help, your Alexa can tell your Roomba to vacuum the floor, and you can dim the lights and things like that. So Right now, there's a lot of focus in the connected home, but obviously this is going to kind of permeate beyond the home and become the kind of Minority Report world in our future. So, emerging issues. Emotion, artificial intelligence. Here, if anybody has interacted with a chatbot, you have experienced emotion AI. It's the algorithms that help our machines to be more human. And effective computing is the research and engineering that actually fuels EAI. And this is kind of a dream job for me because it has all the disciplines, from cognitive science to value-centered design and ethics. If anybody knows any folks at the Effective Computing Lab at MIT. All right. With Gen Z, do we have anybody in Gen Z, anybody born after 95 in the room? A little too young. Yeah. Okay. I was going to tell them they couldn't talk. But what's interesting about this generation is that while they have lived in they've never not known the digital realm, they're actually really averse and the least trusting of technology than any previous generation. And then with evolving gender, what's great about this is that we're abandoning these kind of polarities of 100% male and female, and it's like we don't have to be attached to these binaries. So, last but not least, surveillance capitalism. This actually will be dominating one of the scenarios that we'll see tonight, and this is basically companies using your information either without your knowledge or your consent for profit. All right, now it's time for an emotional prototyping break. Okay, I want you all to think about your favorite or your most used emoji. And raise your hand when you've got an emoji in your mind, okay?
Octopus.
Octopus, excellent. And what are the feelings that you have when you send it?
Alien and love. Alien love.
Alien love. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, anybody else? Hold that thought. Hold it there. Yeah?
The emoji with this tongue sticking out.
Uh-huh.
That one. With the eyes.
Which eyes?
On the farthest to the right. With the eyes that are like, not the money one, the one that's the farthest to the right.
Oh, it's
on
not
the
right.
tongue. That one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and what emotions do you feel when
it's
you...
hey, like a neutral. So it's not good or bad. It's like, this is happening.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Cool. One more?
Smiling eye.
Oh yeah, this one here.
I have a new nose, so there's a lot of that response to what he's doing, how he's walking, legs. Smile cry.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to come back to the octopus. If you were to give that emoji a scent or a taste, what would it be?
I feel like it's more of like a sensation of being a little overwhelmed. The sensory taste. No. I mean, clearly I want to say like pulpo, like, Spanish, like, but that's not what I mean when I'm sending it.
Yeah. No, it's good. We're prototyping.
Yeah.
There's no right answer.
It's an octopus with a heart. It's like
Octopus.
a sensing, a multi-sensing heart expression.
Okay. Cool. All right, and then Vanessa, if you were to add a scent or a taste to that
I
one.
think like something like strawberries, like kind of like it's good, but it's not like ice cream. It's not great. It's okay. It's all right. It's good. We're good. It's like a very like
Middle of the road.
middle of the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. And how about you? If you were to add a flavor or
Maybe
a
like
scent.
ocean mist for
Cool. All right, I'm going to come back to the same three people one last time. So now that you've added the scent or the flavor, does it change the initial emotion that you thought about when you were just thinking about it in a visual way? Add, subtract, just different?
It's fundamentally that's a difficult question to answer because it's more of an expression sensory input.
Cool. No problem. All right.
I find myself using that when I have kind of bad news to give. So I give it and I'm like, So I like the idea of giving someone like strawberries or some fruit, kind of like, it's like a gift basket of like, sorry this is happening to you. I think I stand by it.
And for me, it's connected to like some of the original memories. Like when I was a child and we go to the beach, like so Ocean Mist like has that connotation with me, and also when I first moved here, like when I used to be thrilled that I lived near the ocean.
That's great. Well, yeah, sun has such a lock on our memory. Yeah, midnight. Well, great. Well, thank you guys so much for experimenting and doing some emotional prototyping. The intention here is to just experiment and have a look at emotions in new and different ways. All right. So now it's time for some scenarios. All right. This first scenario that we're going to jump into. It may sound like I'm pitching something to you, and one of the reasons why it'll feel that way is because this scenario is based on what's called a diegetic business, or a fictionalized business. And so take that with a grain of salt as we go into it. It might sound a little... all right. Oh, and one note about these scenarios in general is that while in this example I'm showing you a product, these scenarios the Three Horizons is super flexible. Whether it doesn't have to be limited to products, it can be an initiative, a policy, etc. So, emotions at your service. In the 16th century, it was fashionable to peel an apple and put it under your armpit, and then for a couple of days, leave it under your armpit, and then send it to your lover. Oh, you shouldn't have. No, really. No. But thankfully, in the 19th century, they came up with the greeting card. And up until the early 21st century, that's been the dominant way of sending sentiments. And how might we send sentiments in the future? In Horizon 1, we have today Hallmark. They're doing a pretty good job of pulling in revenue, but they're having a very difficult time transferring their print experience into the digital realm. And so, as you can see here, they're declining in strategic fit. But one thing to note, a fun fact about greeting cards, is that while it's kind of an old technology of ink on paper, people keep them forever. So when you look back at this horizon, it's still kind of keeping some fit, and that's because of that attachment. But unfortunately, that attachment is not overcoming the 10% decline or 10% contraction per year in the greeting card market. So, what's Horizon 2 look like? What's this next wave, the transitional wave? It's Flipbot. One of the primary reasons that people enjoy sending sentiments is that it provides an element of an emotional surprise. And with Flirtbot, it combines the comfort of an established relationship with the ease of technology to induce novelty into a device-driven communication. So let's take a look at what FlirtBot might look like.
Whether you're single or in a relationship, knowing how to flirt is a game changer. Flirting improves your relationships, increases emotional connections, and develops your physical and emotional health. As human beings, we are biologically designed to be positive, social creatures. Yet our personal time is increasingly driven by stress and anxiety. 40% of people today are on antidepressants to help manage their emotional lives. And 62% of all relationships result in breakups within 5 years. Flirting can radically improve your life through a combination of biometrics and biotechnology. Your internal body chemistry can change, improving your flirtatious interactions throughout the day. FlirtBot manages all of these interactions. FlirtBot is an emotional transference messaging system that transforms your messaging into flirtation and fills it with real, positive emotions. Using FlirtBot, you have the ability to transfer emotionally rich messages as words, sensations, or emotions. You can enter a non-flirtatious message, and FlirtBot can increase your message to flirtatious. It is based on who and your partner's and culture, race, tone, personality, and its subject and relationship.
So I'm going to cut the video short, but if you want to see more of the video or the articles that this presentation is based on, you can read them at Blank Space at Medium. So what's interesting about FlirtBot is that it represents the next milestone for AI to achieve. Evolutionary science has shown that for humans, flirting is a key test of emotional and social intelligence. It assesses exactly the capacities that AI researchers are trying to endow machines with: the ability to generate feelings in others, and also to understand context and subtext, or the difference between what a person wants and what a person says. So, we've hit Horizon 2, now we're going to move on to Horizon 3. The future of sending sentiments moves beyond the moment and actually goes beyond to provide multiple micro moments of positive or contextually appropriate emotional hits. And the absence of trees has forced the price of old-fashioned greeting cards into the stratosphere. Only 0.01% can afford the gift of a greeting card in 2049. But the Emotional Layer Cake Company will provide low to middle and high income earners an array of emotional enhancements to give to oneself, to the one or many you love. So, we'll kick things off with edible emojis. They're a great way to start a flirtation, and moving beyond the static cuteness of the past, they will have a scent based on your pheromones, or perhaps the chosen scent from the object of your affection. And they will be three-dimensional.
Wear them under your armpit.
No, you don't have to hold them under your armpit. Yes, so many good reasons. But they might have the texture of a refined cheese puff. They'll be three-dimensional and lightweight. And they will taste amazing while you and your lover simultaneously experience them melting in your mouth. You'll know when your bae has received the emoji when you feel the sensation of a peach dissolve across your tongue. Beyond that, a step up from the sensual emojis, the medium level, if you choose, are embedded romantic facilitators that encourage and brainstorm with you to cultivate or tackle the relationship you are in or seeking, whether that's long-term monogamy, polyamory, or anywhere on the spectrum. And these emotional facilitators, the EMOFACs, if you will, become part of your HVAC system. So there is no visual interruption to your space. Just call them when you need them to help you plan the next date night with your husbands, or to help you pick out the most appropriate sex toys for your new lover. Because ELC has sensors throughout the world, no matter where you are or where your lover is or how many there are, ELC will know exactly what elements will make the day or night with you. So how do they understand you so well? They listen to the nature of your voice. They read the temperature of your sweat, the pulse of your heart, the diameter of your pupil. Beyond romance, they might suggest alternate paths if they see that you're headed down some emotional turmoil, either with yourself or with the important people in your life. And because they understand you so completely, they know when it's good to just keep quiet. If they see that you really need a good cry and to release some tension, they won't bother you while you watch Bambi. So EMOFACs have various different settings. If you like a collaborative environment, a small team of fixers can be programmed. Or if you prefer a one-on-one approach with maybe a modeled emotional or romantic guide, such as the 2049 version of Maya Angelou or James Bond, that level of customization and variety is available. Another component of emotional layer cake is the Emotional Fight Club. This is a safe space to practice all types of emotions or flirtations or sexual pitches. Since there's very little space between our emotions and our technology, some of us forget how to be empathetic or to show our emotions. Clearly, she's been working out. The EFC is a place to limber up your deep limbic system. It can also be a gift to give to your friends so that they can try out things that maybe they've been too afraid to try out in real life. Think that missionary position is too old school? Take it for a ride in EFC. Is that fetish unspeakably taboo? There's no shame with EFC, so you're safe to explore the bounds of your emotional imagination. EFC constantly tracks your vitals, so if you've chosen an emotional experience that's just not right for you, they'll gently pull you out of the simulation. The emotional layer cake represents the future of sending, receiving sentiments, and managing, cultivating, and strengthening our emotional and romantic life. It might seem contradictory to employ technology to imbue our lives with emotion, but it might also be an unexpected bridge to new ways of feeling. And scene. So, as you can see, we went through the established state with Hallmark, the transitional state with FlirtBot, and then the preferable or emerging state with emotional layer cake. So how might these futures actually turn into action? What's great about these three horizons framework is that sometimes they become kind of dual purpose. Horizon 1 becomes an audit. You're already identifying the shortcomings of the existing state. With Horizon 2 and actually with Horizon 3, it's a great way to harvest new product ideas or come up with new product ideas. And to test hypotheses, because you're already identifying uncertainties along the way. So, the next scenario is very different than the last one. This one is dystopian, it's dark, this will not be a pitch. Excuse me, while I rescue my emotions takes a guarded look at our present, seemingly naive understanding of who's using our emotions and how we might shift to submissive acceptance and then move into transformation under constant surveillance. After 30 years of continual surveillance, monitoring, and tracking, will dramatically change our view of trust towards corporations, technology, and potentially each other. The word trust will be seen as naive and idealistic, a quaint relic of the past. People will shut down emotionally because if they express their emotions, that data will be used by corporations to build new products or to be used against them by governments and hackers. So in Horizon 1, we feel like our emotions belong to us. We are unaware of how we are being surveilled and how our data is being collected and monetized. In a real-life example, at the AI lab at CCA, our lecturer asked us to make a mind map of all the ways, all the companies that come in contact with our data. And it was huge, staggeringly huge, kind of disturbing. So in Horizon 2, things don't get better. We will be pummeled into submission. Studies have shown that surveillance has negative effects, reducing creativity, increasing stress, and making subjects feel more threatened. What we see is that surveillance really messes with our ability to put up boundaries. And without being able to put up those boundaries, we start distrusting. And then once we start distrusting or not trusting, then we become apathetic. And if you are apathetic, you are not experiencing emotions. You are reducing the amount of emotions that you're feeling. And renowned cognitive neuroscientist Antonio Damasio, he's found that reason and emotions and survival controls all live in the same part of the brain. And it's possible that they might actually strongly influence one another. If our emotions are taking a beating, what does that do to our survival controls? Even when we know we're being observed, we feel powerless to stop the monitoring. Many humans tend to avoid complex reasoning. We tend to discount future privacy loss. When was the last time you read a ULA, a user license agreement? You and 98% of the population that doesn't read something that they sign. So, we get to this point where we kind of feel like we're going to give up, that I'm just not going to worry about it. The unrelenting and all-encompassing nature of surveillance is kind of beating people into the submission. As long as technology provides humans convenience, the distance between humans and computer and machines will only get smaller. Wearables will move to implants, and mood diaries will move to voice recordings in the cloud. There's this perceived trade-off between privacy and comfort. And companies understand this. So they're burying the data that they're collecting in their products. Cameras and sensors, the most egregious intruders of our privacy, will be hidden. By shifting surveillance to the ether, corporations or organizations avoid harassment. If we look at another form of surveillance, stalking, we see this. All of these corrosive feelings continue to linger long after the stalking or surveillance has ended. Yay. So, there are going to be some organizations that can't subvert the technology of the data collection or the actual physical presence of the data collection. So what they'll do is they'll move to relationship developers and people who we might consider someone that we follow on Instagram today, or a brand ambassador, or a celebrity. And these people will calm the nerves of the people that they are observing through their established relationship. So in Horizon 3, emotional rescue. If the balance of the surveiller and their surveillee is out of whack and there's poor disclosure control, people will want to hide. But there is a silver lining. Here comes the futurist, here comes the optimist. Under psychological duress of constant monitoring, many humans will adapt and overcome. What we now know is meditation will be used as an emotional martial art, used to protect or buffer the mind from persistent surveillance. Think of it as weaponized headspace. Some individuals will develop multiple channels of emotions, diffuse emotions all at once to scramble the monitoring. And because we invested in teaching coding and in primary and secondary school back in the 20-teens, many people will become hackers, devising encryption systems and to stem the tide of the monitoring and providing emotional hideouts for themselves and others. Hackers will become the new travel agents, creating vacations free from observation. So, Jess, could I trouble you to flip the boards? Excellent. So how might these visions of the future turn into action? By looking at the scenario with a dystopian point of view, we're able to address very difficult, hard truths that most people don't want to deal with. And it gives us an opportunity to identify long-term weaknesses and threats. It also provides us with an opportunity to see what kind of transformational opportunities exist within the context of significant structural control. Why we might not be able to fix the pervasive surveillance, but perhaps we might be able to create something that mitigates or bypasses the system. Okay, so let's take a break from dystopia for one last emotional prototyping break. And what I'd like you to do is take a look at this chart. It's a SWOT analysis. Any business folks here? So with a SWOT analysis, it's a great way to kind of get a sense of key factors that define elements related, in this case, to emotions. And I've pre-populated the strengths and the weaknesses. SWOT, S-W-O-T, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I've pre-populated the strengths and weaknesses so that you all can focus on the opportunities and threats, because wouldn't you know it, that's where emotions live, in identifying opportunities and threats. Your team anticipation, okay, and then the 5 here, your team disgust, and then you are team joy, the 4 of you right here. How's that sound? Okay, so let's take just a few minutes to talk amongst yourself and identify the opportunities and threats within your specific emotion. And then once you've got 2 or 3 Post-its for those, go ahead and put them up here.
So for opportunities, we identified that's a good way to mobilize, whether it's yourself or other people, if you're anticipating something. And it's also a good way to make sure you're strongly prepared for something. If you're anticipating it, you can likely see a little bit in the future and hopefully prepare yourself for whatever that is. In terms of threats, there's a couple. You can lose sight of the present if you're so caught up anticipating something else that may come in the future. You can also miss an opportunity as a result of that. So if you're so stuck on something that's hours or days from now, you're totally missing whatever's happening around you. And you may be disappointed when you get there because you built this thing up in anticipation, and then you're like, oh, that was it when you finally arrive.
Nice. Great. Thanks. Okay, team discussed. Who wants to come and share?
opportunities and threats around disgust, the first thing that came to mind was like the behavior of some of my two kids. They exemplify that almost every time. But in terms of an opportunity, one of the most powerful ones related to disgust is the ability to use it to nudge behavior changes. I mean, it's definitely a protective thing, and by leveraging disgust into realms where it typically doesn't apply, we can potentially use to nudge behaviors and create a degree of self-improvement. You know, the example with my kids is, around hygiene, for example. Another interesting opportunity is that, and this is something I've observed as well with children, is that they explore things that are disgusting as a way of provoking their parents and creating a differentiated sense of self. I don't like sleeping with a cuddly teddy bear. I like sleeping with a spiky blue monster instead, that has a three-way jaw. That's the one I like, and the parents are like, ugh, but he's asserted his identity. So by probing the limits of disgust, you might be able to create a better sense of self-expression, self-differentiation, and consciously explore boundaries. One of the things that we discussed as well is the social nature of disgust. What things are disgusting varies very often according to cultural and social milieux. And that can be both an opportunity and a threat. An opportunity in the sense that you can encourage people to self-consciously reflect upon, why am I feeling disgust? Is it really a protective mechanism, or is it a social imposition? Is it something I learned? And possibly also a threat in that it can be used to manipulate populations, disgust of the other, people who don't look like me are disgusting, etc. So that seems to be a threat. So we put it kind of straddling the boundary here. Another place where disgust was threatening was in the idea of desensitization. Continual exposure to disgusting stimuli reduces its protective value. If you revel in gore or guts or slime, then eventually it starts becoming harmful. So that's kind of where, did I miss anything? Did I capture the, great.
Cool, great. All right. Team Joy.
So I think we talked a little bit in the opportunities and a couple different affinities. So one was around joy, being able to have the opportunity to have more kindness for other people, have more creativity as a person, having sort of both stress reduction and getting outside of the comfort zone when you have joy. And then the final thing we had for opportunities was increasing connections with other people and friendships. So joy is a sort of social aspect. And then on the threat side, we said there's an opportunity or threat of reduced patience, so you want joy all the time. Minimizing consequences or side effects. So if you feel joy, they minimize other things that happen because you're feeling joy, as well as overlooking negative consequences. So if something joyful is happening to me, I might not think about the negative things that are happening to someone else.
Cool. Thank you so much. So now that you guys have gone through that, in general, and maybe some of you guys just did this kind of on your own, does articulating emotions in this way, make you feel as though you have a greater understanding of those emotions now, having gone through this exercise? Yes?
What I like about it is augmenting the emotion, right? So you think about, disgust is a very strong word, right? And so it just creates so many images in the mind and situations, and then creating solutions to make sure that situation doesn't occur. Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah. Do any of you think that by understanding them better in this way and kind of going through this SWOT analysis, that it might help you manage your emotions more effectively just by articulating them? Cool. Okay, thank you for experimenting. All right, last scenario. I love what you're feeling. Who's the designer? Explores the idea that there's a general assumption that we know all the emotions that are out there, and oh, thank you so much. And that all the emotions that are out there are known and established. And how might we break past this limited view and design completely new emotions in the future? Just with this exercise that you just did, you might be thinking about how emotions could be different. So, with Horizon 1, we start with semi-managed emotions right now. There's all these different ways that we kind of manage our emotions. Sometimes we want them, the word semi is used because sometimes we want our emotions to run free, like joy. We want to let that just go, right? Or, but sometimes we want to rein in unruly emotions. You know? When my little brother used to piss me off so much, I just wanted to haul up and slap him. You know, that's the time when I would have to rein in my unruly emotions. Especially if mom was out of the house. After working with our feelings on a conscious level, we might actually turn to, hold on 1 second. Yeah. If you think about it, in many ways, we have very little control over our emotions. We might be able to manage how we respond, so the expressive manifestation of our emotions, we're more likely to be able to help that or control that, but we're ill-equipped to manage the subjective expression or aspect of our emotions. So after working with our feelings on a conscious level, we might turn to hypnosis to work on a subconscious level. And hypnosis uses focused attention, and it reduces the peripheral awareness so that you can basically have an enhanced capacity to receive suggestion. Now, while it has yet to be determined that it literally influences emotions, it has been used to help people deal with some significant emotional challenges like fears, phobias, and addictions. Thankfully, many humans use our sense of accountability and reflection to check our emotions if we feel that we are out of line with societal norms. If our sad feelings are preventing us from doing our job or threatening our relationships, 1 in 6 Americans will turn to antidepressants. We might then combine the antidepressants with counseling to work through our unidentified emotions and challenges, adding emotional and behavioral tools that then put those emotional solutions into action. But what if we could train our emotions? Or maybe even more preferable, what if we could design our emotions? Could technology manage our emotions in a way that humans can't? Before we can design emotions, we will train our emotions. Hypnosis and guided meditation will combine to create a superpowered emotion management system. This enhanced technique will shift into the biohacking realm, and it will be mainstreamed through celebrity and person-to-person testimonials, through social media and counselors. These ethical counselors will be trained to instruct individuals in EMS. High standards for the counselors will be essential so that they teach people to train their emotions in a way that is beneficial to society, not destructive. People will feel empowered because they will have more control over their emotions than with drugs. They no longer suffer from libido-reducing or affect-flattening side effects. And since Gen Z is experiencing a higher rate of depression and anxiety than another generation prior, this will be a super useful resource for them. Currently, we learn to recognize the emotions that we notice. But they're, sorry. This is Horizon 2, trained emotions. Currently, we recognize the emotions that we notice, but there are times that it could just be a matter of not having the right words, like we just experienced. If people are able to, if you think about how much information we take in and day out, how much do we really notice? So, let's say you're better able to distinguish between feeling despair and anxiety. You might better be able to identify that you need to resolve how you need to resolve those feelings. Whether to talk to a friend, maybe you just need to go to a movie, or maybe it's time to get a referral to a counselor. And to increase our emotional fitness, we will immerse ourselves in language. Languages that we are unfamiliar with, searching for novel ways to describe our feelings. The word acknowledge doesn't exist in Mandarin, but American English doesn't have a word for revered elder who appreciates the past. We will explore others' languages and rituals to find new ways to describe emotions to help us manage our lives. So, do you like your emotions a little roomy, or would you prefer a more tailored fit? If we follow the American philosopher and psychologist William James, and take it that emotions follow physiology rather than the other way around, then it might be possible to produce novel emotions by altering or intervening differently in human physiology, creating totally new emotions. In Horizon 3, 30 years from now, we will understand the functions of organs, tissues, cells, and chemical phenomena in such a way that we can design completely new emotions or expand upon the existing emotions. For example, you meet Gaston while traveling in Australia. He is of French, Armenian, Balinese heritage, and you are enthralled with his worldview and his approach to personal relationships. You've never seen such a winning set of emotions before. So you ask him, could I record you while you're emoting? And he says yes. And then you ask him, can I actually get also an impulse map, a map of his brain impulses? He agrees, and it's in the future. And so then when you come back home, you work with your emotion designer to see how Gaston's emotions might complement your array of emotions. And the emotion designer will consider the best area to see the brain for those particular emotions. They might choose the deep limbic system for highly charged emotions, highly charged emotional memories, or the basal ganglia, just because that's a fun word to say, which coordinates combining movements, feelings, and thoughts. Designers will come to be known for how their skill at placing the right emotion in the right part of the brain with the right mix of other emotions. Most people will want positive feelings implanted, but there will be some who might want negative emotions or feelings. For example, someone might have a tough time getting angry, and so the emotion designer can just add enough anger, just enough to have when anger is warranted. So our ideas about emotions stem largely from the 19th and 20th century. To think that we have defined and understood all there is to know about emotions would be foolhardy. The preferred future of designing emotions is far-fetched, but based on what we're learning today, it is in the realm of possibilities. So how might these visions of the future turn into action? In Horizon 1, we had semi-managed emotions. In Horizon 2, we had trained emotions. In Horizon 3, we had fully designed emotions. What's interesting about this particular scenario, because it's not addressing a specific product, but a general state of human knowledge and experience, it can be used in a vast array of applications. It could be used in a specific way to identify new emotional connections between products and humans. Or it could be used at a higher level, in a more general way, to determine a new area of research for a cognitive neuroscience team. So, thank you very much. Before we wrap up, I just want to we've covered a lot of ground. So just to quickly sum up where we've been. We started off by defining emotions and understanding why they're important. We then went into the 3 horizons, where we saw how this structure facilitates the exploration of what we don't know, scaffolded by what we do know. And from there, we went into the 3 speculative futures, with emotions at your service. We saw that managing, testing, cultivating, and strengthening our emotional and romantic life might be like if it's coordinated through a company. In the second scenario, we imagined what human adaptation might look like if we were persistently surveilled. And then in scenario 3, we looked at managing, training, and even designing new emotions. With our emotional prototyping with emojis, we were able to see how shifting our senses of perception might change how we actually feel about an emotion. And then we also saw, through throwing emotions against a SWOT analysis, seemingly the last place that emotions would play, how that might shed light on how we perceive and use our emotions. And who knew traditional business frameworks could get us thinking in new ways. So, thank you very much. We're going to open it to Q&A now. If any questions don't get answered in that time, feel free to reach out to me at email or check me out on Medium. And then I graduate from CCA's MBA in Design Strategy in May, so if there are opportunities that might leverage that degree, talk to me. All right, Q&A. Yes.
So, the framework is really well covered. Could you tell us a little more about how to establish boundaries? So, could you tell us a little more about how to establish boundaries between pure speculative fantasy and more science-based
The research.
fiction?
The research that you do, and when you're exploring the trends and emerging issues, that's the solid research that you do will ground the trends and horizons in data and hard facts. And then you pair that with a bold imagination. So it's kind of this nice duality where you do all the heavy-duty research. So what's great about the research is that when you're doing that, that helps you to kind of see where the line of the story will go, where the line of the scenario is. And then it also can inform where the more speculative aspect can go. Because if you've done the research and you can kind of see, okay, these are the footholds, these are the things that we want to be like solid, but then how far can we diverge from that and still be within the time frame that you're looking at, but also what are the environmental impacts that are going on, what's happening in the larger context that surround the scenario. And you can kind of, I use sometimes the scenario of my grandpa. He built simulators at NASA, and what they would do is there'd be this guy in the booth, and then the simulators in this massive cave, and the guy in the booth was throwing all these variables at the simulator. And so with the horizons, you can kind of do that. You can kind of prototype the scenario yourself and see what kind of dynamics do you want to have at play within that scenario. There's another framework that is collapse, growth, CCA people. Constraints. Yeah. So those could become dials, if you will, that you could kind of play with on any given scenario as well. Is that
Thank you.
great?
I can try the like, but I'm not very well.
Hi, my name's Dylan. Thank you very much.
Hi.
I'm curious about what drew you to these particular scenarios. Was there any kind of extremes of the drivers you were looking at that made you think they were more likely than others, or just kind of what was your thought process there?
So one thing to know is that I wrote these scenarios actually last October of 2017. And so some of the trends that we saw actually have become, or some of the emerging issues that we saw, like surveillance capitalism, that's really a trend. And it really was a trend at that point. But what drew me, being a politician here, and I'm averting your question, what drew me to the scenarios was because emotions are so far-reaching, coming up with a way to kind of bring them down to size. I think, as I recall, the way that I was directed was by what was most interesting to me, and what was converging in terms of trends and emerging issues, and then how might those kind of looking at it's a combination of kind of what I was talking about earlier with Greg, is that this duality between the data and the narrative. So the data actually really informs where the story goes, and those become kind of the nuggets that go, oh, okay, this is where we can go. But I mean, in general, because of Lusty Letter, I'm really interested in emotions, and I'm incredibly interested in emotional AI. So that was kind of a driver just for my own personal interests. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I can think about it more too if you want to reach. I can get back to you with more specifics. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I have a quick question about the question between Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. Horizon 1 kind of makes sense to me because of like a Hallmark or a Sears. We've been seeing it for a while. It's just been the downward trajectory as Amazon has been getting, obviously more sales. But how do you really draw the line between Horizon 2 and Horizon 3, where Horizon 2 sort of at the very end can kind of dip down versus Horizon 3, if it's more adopted by the masses, it takes off, right? Do you gauge that, monitor it, or do you have any techniques to put any stakes in the ground?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and that's something that we talked a lot about actually in Matthew Manis's class on strategic foresight, because in the actual mapping out of these scenarios, a lot of times people do get tripped up between 2 and 3, and with 3, it has to be dramatic change. So Horizon 2 can be moderate change, but Horizon 3 really has to be, there has to be significant impact, where systems are changing. Any DMBAers, would you add to that in terms of like the distinction between 2 and 3?
I might say that it's also a more volatile period, so there's lots of wacky innovations in Horizon 2, sometimes all over the map. So you might have multiple lines going through Horizon 2, where the third one kind of is the winning emergent reality.
I think it's essential to say that Horizon 3 is a design hypothesis, that it's designed to be like really pressure tested and really like bend. Where like Horizon 2 is typically things that we can see from here.
Exactly.
Okay, this is where things are going. Whereas
Yeah.
Horizon 3 is where we really like get to design something, because we're not archipelagists, we're designers.
Yeah.
That then we put to whatever has comes as things go.
And to build on that is, if you were standing at Horizon 1 and looking at Horizon 3, sometimes it's very faint, seeing Horizon 3 from Horizon 1. So yeah.
Anybody else have questions? I think that's it.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's give Stacey a big round